Hi everyone and Happy New Year. This will probably be a shorter video because I don't have too many books to review today, but these are the ones I read since we last talked. Side note, you may have noticed my recent video about Midnight Sun, the book in the Twilight series, was a little bit different, and I want to be clear, I do intend to keep making these types of videos that are more quiet and low-key, but to be honest, this channel exists because I think it's fun to make videos and I just want to try different things. So if that wasn't your type of video, that's totally fine. Um, so, like I said, these are the books that I read at the end of the year as well as the last couple days. So let's just get started with She's Still There. This is a self-help book about recovering. The subtitle is Recovering the Girl in You. You don't have to be a woman to read this, but it basically says that there's your true self inside of you that you may have lost sight of because things in your life didn't go how you planned, and because you just get older and you have other responsibilities and priorities. And um, it is actually a Christian-based book. I am not a Christian. And so if that makes you uncomfortable, you might not really like it. Since I don't really believe in a lot of the stuff the author was talking about, I really just supplemented um, whenever she called upon God's guidance. I just kind of used my own framework and applied it to my belief system. So it didn't inhibit my ability to enjoy the book. And to be honest, I don't read self-help books to necessarily learn something novel from the author. I don't think that the author knows how I should live my life. It's actually more something I do to allow myself the space to self-reflect and ask myself those questions and to remind myself that taking the time to think just about who I am and what I want is valuable. So, again, I wasn't reading this to be told what to do, and so even if I didn't agree with her, it was easy for me to just use it as a starting point to think about my own beliefs and desires. With that said, it goes on a little bit long and it's not especially interesting writing or storytelling, but it's easy enough to read and it wasn't a horrible experience. I would say if you're a Christian, you probably would get a lot more out of it, but it was a nice way to start my year and just think about how I can get back to my authentic self, because that's a really big part of, I don't like to make resolutions per se, but it's something I'm thinking about this year. I'm going to give it a C. Daring Greatly by Brene Brown is kind of also a self-help book, but it's a lot more science-based because Brene Brown is actually, I don't want to be wrong. I think she's actually a sociologist. I don't know what you would call her, but it's based on, like experiments and talking with real case studies. She studies shame particularly and vulnerability, stuff like that. And so actually, this book isn't, about taking physical risks necessarily. It's actually more about being vulnerable and being willing to be authentic with people, even though it feels really uncomfortable. That's something I can definitely relate to. It was an uplifting book to read, and I like that it is rooted in science, so I feel like there's something I can attach to that makes it feel justified. Uh, Honestly, I don't remember much about this book, though. I can't tell you like one big takeaway from it. Um, but I do remember her discussing like toxic masculinity and how men often are really affected by this, how they don't feel they can just be emotional. And I really think that's an important thing to talk about. Also, from a personal standpoint, I struggle from the same thing, whether it's trying to be masculine or just trying to be stoic in a sort of American, like Midwestern way. Um, I do struggle with that. And so I'm trying to be more emotionally vulnerable because that's how you get really good connections. And it's better for yourself as well. So I think it's great what she's trying to do and talk about. Well written and everything. But yeah, I think I'd just give it a B. The Sundown Motel by Simone St. James is sort of a mystery, kind of horror book. I thought I would really like it, and I'm sorry to say I didn't particularly like it. It is told from two perspectives. One is in the 80s, and then the other is modern day, told by that narrator's niece. So she is kind of going through the same thing that her aunt went through in the 80s, working at this motel night shift. It's really creepy. There's like ghosts. And I see what it's trying to do um, about the horror trope and about about the murdered woman sort of thing in horror. That, women are often the ones to go missing and be killed, and that's a true fact. I mean, that's real life, but that's an interesting thing to inspect in this book, but the actual plot is really not that interesting to me. I felt like it didn't go anywhere. It was predictable. It started out good because the setting is creepy and you think something really mysterious and dreadful is happening, but it just never goes anywhere from there, honestly. And I was surprised because the reviews all say it's really good. And I think that may be because of the kind of feminist slant, which is fine. But as a book, as a story, I didn't love it. I mean, I'm hesitant to give it to D because it's not terrible, but it's my tier system, so whatever. That's what I'm giving it. Salem's Lot is a Stephen King novel. Obviously a very popular author. And this one is about vampires. Um, I have never actually read a Stephen King novel before this one. And I kind of knew what to expect. It was going to be long, a lot of characters. And it just kind of fell flat for me. Like a lot of these books, it starts out kind of interesting, but it just lingers around so many different characters for so long. I couldn't keep them all straight. And when you finally get to the scary part, it just kind of doesn't pick up momentum from there. I appreciate that it was trying to be this sort of newer Dracula, but it is a pretty old book. I think it's from like the 70s or something. So I can't expect it to be updated. Like, I think some of the things I dislike about it are just that it's cliche or whatever, but it probably set the cliche. But even back then, they had monster films long before this book and stuff, and it references that as well. So I think it is like this referential piece of literature that wants to discuss genre fiction and horror. So for me, it just felt a little bit played out, and I wasn't scared. And a lot of people say it's really scary, and I just didn't get any thrill out of it. I didn't hate it, but you know, if we're judging this strictly on my enjoyment, so take it all with a grain of salt again. I'll put it on a D. It's a very well written book, of course. I mean, this author wouldn't be this famous if he wasn't masterful with language and truthful with character. Okay, Followers is, I realized I was missing a book. Followers is a sci-fi sort of novel set in the future. It's two perspectives. One is kind of set now, and then the other one in the future. It's a really cool concept. It's about social media and fame, but not in the way that I think a lot of times gets talked about. It's just a unique concept about what if we took this influencer culture to a new level. It has a lot of those like dystopian sort of tropes, but I just thought it was pretty fresh and exciting. Um, with that said, it does get a little bit preachy in the like phones are bad sort of thing, but it does it in a fairly nuanced way. It's not like some media I've seen about that kind of thing. It's sort of a Black Mirror style story. It has some darkly funny parts. The characters are, some of them are really kind of funny and interesting and someone you could imagine. Then others are kind of just unlikable for no reason. Like, I don't feel anything about them. I wouldn't say I had an investment in these characters, but for a lot of the time, because they are a little bit unlikable. But overall, the plot's really good. It's really worth reading for sure. Well-conceived world building and everything. So I would definitely recommend it, and I'll give it an A. Here I am with another Sophie Kinsella book. I don't know why I keep reading them, because they're never really that good. People really love them, though. They're very popular, and so I just keep thinking, well, they must have some merit. And they do. They're really, like, easy to read, just lighthearted, usually. If I need a little break, that's what I've been reading. However, I wish they were a little bit more fun than if they're supposed to be like my junk food book. They tend to be a little bit too long. And like, I know they're supposed to be kind of funny, but then a lot of times I'm just like, this isn't really funny. Wedding Night in particular is just, it's about these people who kind of get married on a whim. And then the woman's sister is trying to stop this marriage or, try to get it annulled. So it's a fun premise. It is. And, there's a couple of kind of funny little moments. It's got some heartwarming moments, but it's very much a rom-com, and you can probably guess what happens. it's, yeah, like I said, a little bit too long and kind of ridiculous. Like, I wouldn't, it's not believable. Um, and I probably will read another Sophie Kinsella book. Like, I think she's okay at writing, but so it is definitely like you just watched a bunch of rom-coms. It's like, this is kind of stupid, but whatever. So I'll give that a C. The Phantom of the Opera. Here's an interesting one for you. I am a big fan of the musical and the cheesy movie from like 2005. I've seen that movie so many times, and I've seen the musical many times. I love it. I love the story, and like it's just something that I loved when I was young, and so it just speaks to me in a nostalgic way. So I was excited to get more context. I feel like there was a lot of questions I had that I thought this might fill in the blanks, and I will tell you that it doesn't, and it actually just raises more questions. Um, it's kind of a product of its time. Like, it's just the pacing is weird. There's a lot of really boring parts where it's just like conversations about stuff you don't care about. There are too many characters. Um, Random characters just kind of show up and you're not really sure why they're there. The other thing is the movie shows Christine's perspective straight on. Like we see her go into the lair and she is essentially, captive there and we get to see that. Most of that sort of stuff is told and not shown. A lot of the action is off stage here, so it's kind of like the boring parts are longer and then the exciting parts are skimmed over or confusing. Um, of course, it's a cool setting and it's the original, so like, I can't necessarily complain that this is worse than the movie or the musical. I also recognize the musical is very flawed and very cheesy, but this book is as well. And I think what drew me to The Phantom when I was a young preteen was it was one of the first stories I saw with this moral ambiguity that you kind of like the Phantom, but then you go, wait, he's a murderer and a kidnapper and a stalker, and it's like, yeah, he had a sad life, but that doesn't justify what he does. And should you give him sympathy, and should Christine just leave him to suffer? And I mean, yes, she should, but it was for me really eye-opening to like see that people are kind of not all bad or good. So I wished the book actually went into that more. I just felt more like Eric was this like loser, and that's all it was. He just kind of cries over Christine, and we don't feel bad for him. I think we're supposed to, I guess. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It was hard for me to understand his illusions, and hard for me to understand like who the Persian was, which is this character um, who is very important, but it's like, where did he come from? And it's told from multiple perspectives in this sort of true story framing narrative device. So there's a lot of weird stuff that just doesn't really, you lose all the momentum that you might have gained because you're switching perspectives, and then it's just kind of skimmed over. I hope that made sense. Um, Probably a C here because, it's a beloved story, but Swimming in Darkness is a graphic novel. It is about these natural baths in Switzerland, I think. I could be wrong. And what is best about this is the setting. Like, I'm really glad it was a graphic novel, because if it wasn't, it wouldn't have been nearly as good. It's sort of an urban legend, myth sort of story about the mountains and this like supernatural things that happens there. And it's this guy who's an architect, and he's sketching the baths, and it's like, wait, these plans don't make sense. There's like a secret room here. Um, it's just mysterious, and I read it in like an hour because it's a graphic novel. It's good. It's just good, I guess. It wasn't incredible, but it was good. I think I'll put it on a B. It's really pretty though. Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me is also a graphic novel, and the art is also really cool. It's stylized in a certain way that I like. It's about a toxic high school relationship this girl keeps getting broken up with, and she's having to learn how to kind of get out of that pattern and respect herself, and how this relationship is negatively affecting her relationships with her friends, who are true friends and good for her. And it's just a girl going through a young relationship where she doesn't realize it's unhealthy because she hasn't really known anything else. So it's an important story. There's a lot of queer representation. It's a modern day adolescent story, and I appreciate that perspective. And yeah, I think I would give that a B as well. Oh, another Sophie Kinsella. Surprise me. It's about a couple who's like realizes they're getting old or whatever, and they've been married so long and it's boring. So they try to surprise each other. It's classic like hijinks. And then it gets this deeper plot twist at the end about the more serious aspects of like family relations, and idealizing people. But it's also kind of boring, honestly. I just didn't love it. It's not bad. It's a little bit witty and all that, but I'd probably just put it at a D. It's just not that good. Um, okay, obviously you guys know about Harry Potter. I don't have to explain this one. So I read the first two when I was like however old I was when they came out, and that was quite a long time ago. It was like 20 years ago. So I finally thought now was a good time to actually read the rest of them, because people think it's blasphemous that I haven't. I have seen the movies, but I don't really remember what happens. So reading this, Prisoner of Azkaban, was like reading it for the first time, and it kind of was, because I only read half of it when I was, 8 or whatever. So it's just a masterful book. I don't need to go on about how great it is, and all things to be said about the author aside, the book itself is quite entertaining. Characters are so real to me. It's just fun. I mean, I don't really need to say anymore. It goes in the S tier. Um, that's what I've read lately. I'm sure I'll have more from you. I'm reading a graphic nonfiction book right now. I am reading a sort of romance audiobook that I'm not loving, so I'll tell you how that goes. And yeah, think that's it for now. I hope that you enjoyed and have a really good start to your year, everybody. Stay safe and healthy and have a lovely day. Goodbye.